Hey guys, what's up? Luke with ThinkBoxly here, coming at you today with another unboxing video, this time of the amazing GTX 1070. Let's get started. So while in the past I've mostly unboxed third-party GPUs, as you can see, this bad boy here is a straight-up reference card. This is in fact the NVIDIA GTX 1070 Founders Edition, and is the direct successor to the last card I unboxed, that being the GTX 970. But before we get too deep into this video, I do want to take a moment to answer one question. That is, who is this card for? Because while yes, it is a successor to the 970, it's also a step up from the 970's price and performance relative to the other cards in its generation. Well, NVIDIA has given the 1070 an MSRP of $379 for third-party cards. For the time being, you'd be lucky to find one for less than $449. The same price as this Founders Edition card will remain permanently. And so it really begs the question, by releasing a card like this, has NVIDIA effectively set the standard for the 1070 being a higher-priced enthusiast card for the foreseeable future? And I think the answer, based on what we've seen so far, is yes. In fact, I think this entire generation is really marketed towards an enthusiast audience in general, with the lowest end cards on both the NVIDIA and AMD side only pulling performance that's slightly above what the 970 offers. For the higher tier cards, the focus is on 1440p and 4K gaming, virtual reality, multi-monitor setups, and so forth. Not the kind of upgrade you make just for the heck of it. Now, there is a ton of value here if you're just interested in flat screen 1080p, since this card will literally run anything at that resolution. But if you wouldn't consider yourself an enthusiast, the X70 tier might be slightly above what you're going for this time around. Even though it bears the 1070 name, you could really think of this as a 980 replacement, with the GTX 1080 replacing the 980 Ti. So with that introduction out of the way, let's take a quick look at the box here. Compared to third-party packaging, NVIDIA's box is quite minimalistic on the whole. Smaller too, very compact for a graphics card of this size. But not much here to look at really, nothing much on the sides. Even the back of the box doesn't really go through the specs, instead it just highlights some of the card's features and shows off that cool Batman or Deus Ex-like design. As you can see here, we have, in NVIDIA's language, the ultimate gaming platform, a quantum leap in performance, next-gen gaming technologies. Actually, pretty much the only thing here that could really be considered a feature is this note about being VR ready, which at this point that's going to be true of basically every GPU ever made moving forward, so kind of an odd way of marketing the product if you ask me. No mention of Ansel or simultaneous multi-projection, which are, kind of the selling points of the Pascal architecture, but hey, this is a Founders Edition card, you won't be getting it if you don't already know all that, so what does NVIDIA care, right? Well, that about does it for the box, so without further ado, let's pop the side open and see what's inside. And what do you know, it's another box! And quite similar to the outer box too, but with one key difference. I'm guessing we slide out this part here. Just have to cut through a couple strips of tape, and here we go. Hopefully I'm doing this the right direction here. And that is an absolute trophy of a display case. Here we have the GTX 1070 in all its anti-static glory, as well as a little packet behind it of all the obligatory information you'll probably never read. Though this stuff looks so cool, I might actually give it a go for a change. Oh, one thing you want to take a look at here is the Founders Edition badge for you to put on your case, if hardware badges are your thing. Kind of neat. Not much else here though, no cables or adapters, just your regular quick start guide and other information. One really interesting omission is that there's no driver installation CD here. Of course, you should always download the latest drivers anyway, but still, what a world we live in, right? I mean, I remember when mice and keyboards came with driver discs, for crying out loud. Though those were 3.5-inch floppies, not CDs, because your optical disc drive needed drivers too. But anyway, be sure to have an active internet connection when you get this card set up. I suppose it's safe to assume that if you're buying a $450 card, that you have access to the internet as well. But enough about all that, you're here to see one thing, and that is the GTX 1070 itself. As we take it out of the plastic here, we can just run through some of the specs. This is an 8GB card. Yes, that's 8 full gigabytes of VRAM. Still GDDR5, not GDDR5X like the 1080, but NVIDIA is promising that this is still some of the fastest GDDR5 you've ever seen. No bottlenecks holding it back whatsoever. And indeed, the rest of the card is pretty spacious. The 1070 packs the same GP104 GPU as the GTX 1080, with all 64 ROPs included, and that's paired with 1,920 CUDA cores, 120 texture units, and a whopping 7.2 billion transistors, up from 5.2 billion in the 970. The 1070 also has a core clock speed of 1,506 MHz and a 256-bit memory interface with an effective 8 GHz memory clock, significantly higher than the 7 GHz you'd expect out of GDDR5. All this in a package that won't draw more than 150 watts, which all in all is pretty incredible, but again, you are paying for it. The card itself is obviously quite sleek and interesting to look at with its angular design. Towards the back, we have a single blower-style fan paired with an enclosed heatsink running the length of the card. There's also a bit of plastic here on this part, so do be sure to peel that off before sticking this in your PC. On the bottom of the card, we have the usual PCI Express 3.0 connection, although oddly NVIDIA didn't include any sort of rubber cap like most third parties do. What they did include is a full backplate, leaving the card's PCB completely unexposed, which is pretty neat. On the back of the card, we have nothing except, looks like a few holes here, which would be for the copper heatsink pipes inside. And on the other side, we have a single 8-pin power connection, as well as an illuminated logo for all of you out there with windowed side panels. On the front, we have all of our I/O, as you'd expect, pretty standard configuration here. Up top, we have a single Dvi port, and that is DVI-D from the looks of it, not DVI-I. So, in other words, you won't be able to hook this card up to a VGA monitor without an active converter. On its own, analog is not supported. Moving on, we do have 3 display ports and 1 HDMI port smack in the middle there. And this is HDMI 2.0B, by the way, supporting outputs up to 8K at 60 Hz. Probably overkill for this generation, but still very impressive. And indeed, that is the word that comes to mind with the 1070 in general. Yes, it's expensive, but it's also the best value card of its class ever made. Considering how this thing stacks up against last generation's Titan cards, $450 is actually a very solid price and will hopefully only get better with time. Of course, for right here and right now, I will be putting the 1070 through its paces, comparing it in benchmarks against the GTX 970 to see how big of a generational step up we're talking here. All that good stuff and more will be coming to YouTube and thinkboxy.com, so stay tuned. And of course, please consider liking and subscribing if you did indeed like this video. As always, this has been Luke with ThinkBoxly, and I'll see you next time. Actually, I won't really see you, but you will see me, or at least whatever I'm unboxing. Bye, guys.